Hey everyone, this is Nick and welcome back to the Linux and open source news show. This week we've got a distro-packed episode with the release of Fedora 42, the alpha for the immutable version of Manjaro, the release of Ubuntu 25.04, ArcoLinux shutting down, Nitrux bringing some sort of package manager and repository for AppImages, and a lot more. So as always, I left all the links that I used to make this episode in the show notes, and as always, I'm also going to talk about our sponsor. This video is sponsored by SquareSpace, your all-in-one platform to create, publish, and manage your own website. Squarespace has really easy tools to make sure anyone can end up with a nice-looking, well-optimized website, no matter if they know how to code or not. They have what they call their blueprint system, which lets you pick from a variety of templates that are pre-built and will suit any type of website, whether it's a simple blog, an online store, a video platform, whatever. All these templates are pre-optimized for good search engine optimization, but they also give you SEO tools to make sure that your website doesn't end up at the last page of Google's search results. On top of that, to go further, Squarespace has their own design engine to create your own pages. You can just drag and drop elements where you want them, and you can change the colors, the fonts, and just tweak the template however you want. And once you have something you like, you can add extra features on top, like creating your own online shop complete with a payment system. You can even design your own logo from the Squarespace interface and book your own domain name. So check out squarespace.com/thelinuxexperiment or just click the link in the description below and give Squarespace a shot. You'll even get 10% off your first website or domain purchase. So let's start with Fedora 42. It was released this week with a bunch of nice upgrades. All of its spins also saw the same update, but the main one, let's say the GNOME edition, is of course the main focus. Yes, I know KDE is now an official edition of Fedora, not just a spin, but in my heart Fedora will always remain a GNOME distro first and foremost, although it is no longer that factually. So, of course, Fedora gains the GNOME 48 changes with HDR support, a lot of work on accessibility, better camera handling with Pipewire and web browsers, the top-level drag and cursor-shaped protocols for Waylands. You also have notification grouping, triple buffering, better performance throughout the shell, a better image viewer with image editing tools, the new default font, which Fedora will use as well, called Advaita 100 and based on Inter, and the option to cap the battery charge to 80% if you keep your laptop plugged in most of the time. There's also the new digital well-being tools as well in GNOME settings. Fedora-specific changes though, they include the new Fedora installer, which is much easier to understand than their previous one. Even though you could get used to the older Anaconda, the new one is just much more legible. Fedora 42 also has images for the Windows subsystem for Linux users on Windows. Basically, you can install Fedora as a container for WSL. There's a new easy-to-install stack to run x86 programs on ARM CPUs. It bundles FEX, which is an x86 emulator, and a micro VM solution called MUVM, plus a utility that decides what the best emulator is when you're trying to launch a specific x86 program. You can install this entire stack through the x86-emulation meta package or package group, and it's pre-installed on the KDE edition of Fedora. Also worthy of being mentioned is the Cosmic spin, because Fedora 42 comes with a spin, a specific non-official community edition that runs the Cosmic desktop, which I think is the first version of Fedora to come out with this specific one. Cosmic is still in alpha, it still doesn't have a beta release date or a stable version coming out, but yeah, it is still a pretty nice desktop still, so if you want to try it out, Fedora might not be the worst place. Fedora 42 is a solid update to a solid distro. There's nothing really bad to say about it, it's just good. Now, a distro that I don't generally find that good is Manjaro. It tends to be unstable in my experience. It has a bunch of skeletons in its closet in terms of how it is managed as a company. But they've just announced Manjaro Summit, which is the name for their immutable Manjaro distro. They released a public alpha for that, and I think it's interesting because it is an immutable distro, so it has the potential to fix the stability problems I've always encountered with regular Manjaro. So Summit is a semi-immutable distro with an atomic update system, meaning you update by downloading pre-made disk images instead of updating package by package. And the root partition of your system is read-only. Only specific parts of that file system will be migrated to the new system during an update. It doesn't mean that you cannot change anything, you can change stuff, but instead of modifying config files by hand, you will use tools, graphical tools or command line tools to effect these changes and get them carried over to the next reboot or update. And if you're wondering why this might help with making Manjaro more stable, well, that's because this way the system image is virtually identical between users, and so finding and fixing bugs is a bit easier than with the regular package-based system where users could have tweaked or changed anything. It also makes the system a bit more resistant to malware, and it gives users the ability to roll back to a previous update by just rebooting on the previous system image. Which is good because it means you do not need a specific file system to get the option to do basically system snapshots and rollbacks. It is an alpha, so expect crashes, bugs, breakages, and missing features, and Manjaro also doesn't really seem to know if they want this to be a workstation distro, so something well-tested, stable, with regular updates that generally work reliably, or if they just want this to be a rolling release where they just push everything when it's ready, and if it works, and if it doesn't, you take care of that. I don't think it makes sense in that last iteration. I think it only makes sense as a workstation distro, because the goal of an immutable system is to be really stable, easy to roll back, and basically a rock-solid system. So I think it only makes sense if they test it well and only publish really good and solid disk image as the updates, but who knows? It's Manjaro, we'll see what they do with that. Now, something I missed last week, but we need to mention in this episode, ArcoLinux is now unfortunately gone. The Arch-based distro and all of its projects are now discontinued. That includes all the ISOs they made with various command line or graphical installers, all the ISOs with pre-configured graphical desktops, but also all the tools that let you build your own ISOs for Arco as well. ArcoLinux is, or most likely was, a distro meant to make it easier to install and maintain and understand Arch on a daily basis. With pre-configured install options, it was also a giant knowledge base and community and documentation base that helped people learn Arch and Linux. But it was mostly a one-person project, and as it tends to happen, people just move on to other things. The developer and maintainer approaches 60 years old, he just doesn't have the energy and focus to maintain all of that anymore. Now, fortunately, Arco users will have an easy path to transition to regular Arch. There are transition packages that will remove all the ArcoLinux branding, it will replace certain config files, and replace the ArcoLinux repos with chaotic AUR, so no reinstall will be needed. Now, this was handled really gracefully, and it is completely normal that after years and years of dedication to a specific project, to teaching people certain things, you'd want to just stop and retire. At some point, you just want to be a user and not a developer, and that's exactly what the person behind ArcoLinux says that he wants to become. Fortunately, all the YouTube videos, all the knowledge base will still remain online, so if you want to learn about Arch, you can still do that with all of the ArcoLinux Academy, and also probably all the code will have been forked and copied and will be reused in other projects, so it's not the end, it's just a new beginning from all of that hard work. Now, of course, we also had the release of Ubuntu 25.04 this week. You might have seen my dedicated video on the channel. If you haven't, well, I encourage you to go check that out. I'm not going to repeat everything here, but the TLDR is, it is a bigger update than I expected, because not only have they improved the installer, which now works much better with dual boots, especially with Windows, and BitLocker encrypted partitions, they also fixed a bunch of Yaru icons to look much better by default. They replaced the aging PDF viewer called Events by Papers, which is a GTK4 and libadvita app. They replaced the geolocation solution that they used by BeaconDB. They moved to apt3, which brings a bunch of nice features. They added NVIDIA Dynamic Boost as well inside of Ubuntu. And of course, they come with GNOME 48 with all the updates that we already talked about when you talked about Fedora 42. All the flavors also received updates, mostly just updates to their latest desktop environment. The only big ones are Ubuntu moving to Plasma 6.3, which is a nice update, even though it's not a major one, and Ubuntu moving to XFC 4.20, which is definitely a big update over XFC 4.18 that you got previously. Now, if you want to see what's new in Ubuntu 25.04, go check out the dedicated video I made. If you want to see what's new in Plasma 6.3 for Ubuntu users, I made a video about that specific desktop environment update as well, so go check that out. It's on the channel somewhere. Just search for it. It will pop up, I'm sure. Now, you might know about Nitrux, a Linux distro that focuses a lot on AppImages. Well, they just introduced NX App Hub, NX for Nitrux and App Hub as like some kind of repo. It's a system to build and manage app images for the system in a bid to better integrate the app image format with the system it runs on. AppHub adds a new concept to app images called app boxes. These app boxes are app images that are built specifically for Nitrux using a YAML file located in a central repo. These app boxes are apparently built from Debian packages, and so you basically have a central repo with descriptive files that tell your system how to build an app image for your distro from a Debian package and its dependencies, and then it installs that specific app image properly onto your system. They also integrate these apps more smoothly using the NX App Hub daemon, which I would assume adds .desktop files and file associations, and you also have a command line interface to install, remove, update, and downgrade those app boxes as well without requiring root privileges. There's even a search command to let you sift through the app images available in AppHub's repo, so it is exactly like a package manager for app images, except it's not for all app images, it's for app images that you can build specifically for Nitrux. I think it's interesting and weird at the same time. They're taking Debian packages and their dependencies and bundling that into an app image that you install through a central repo with a centralized package manager. So basically, these are Debian packages and you're installing them using something else than apt. I thought the main point of app images was to have portability. And if you need to use a package manager to install, update, remove, or downgrade your app images, then this is not really portable anymore. So I'm not sure what the benefit is, and if you have to have a centralized system, I will always take a Flatpak, a normal deb or RPM package, or even a snap over an app image, because in my experience, they just aren't as good. But if you like app images, then I think it's good. You can still use your regular independent app images, but if you use Nitrux, you have a much better way of interacting with app images that actually takes advantage of all the experience we've had on Linux building centralized repos of packages. So I think that's good for the format. Now, speaking of desktop environments, LXQt got a big release this week, version 2.2. It brings improved Wayland support. It now supports multiple different Wayland compositors, and it also improves multi-screen setups by using screen names instead of screen numbers. It also supports global keyboard shortcuts. The file manager also got better at bulk renaming files. It got a better open with menu that can handle multiple file types at the same time, and there are more keyboard shortcuts to change the view mode inside of that file manager. The LXQt terminal got better text rendering. It now supports native transparency instead of app-based transparency. LXQt is also a bit more secure by preventing two sessions being started with the same user account. The desktop supports power profiles, and there are a lot of other smaller changes. Now, as we've seen in my desktop environment comparison video, using LXQt won't give you better CPU or GPU performance than using GNOME or KDE, but it does tend to use less RAM than a lot of other options, and it doesn't seem to use more battery life compared to a lot of other X11-based desktops, LXQT just performs as well as GNOME or KDE in terms of battery life, which is really good. So if you want a lightweight but still very powerful desktop with a lot of options, LXQT isn't a bad choice at all. And we'll conclude on another disastrous ruling for Google, because yet another judge ruled in the US that Google violated some antitrust laws. This time it was by building and maintaining a monopoly on the advertising technology market. Now, importantly, Google hasn't been ruled a monopoly in the ad networks market. They are not a monopoly in terms of ads, but they have been found guilty of monopolizing the ad tech market because they tied together DoubleClick for publishers, which is the tool to handle your ad campaigns, and Ad Exchange, their ad exchange where you can buy ad placements. Basically, they forced companies to use their DoubleClick tool if they wanted to access their ad exchange, instead of letting this exchange be accessed by competitors. And they also eliminated features that did not help them make more money, or features that could save their customers money once those customers were logged in. They also apparently imposed anti-competitive policies on those same customers. The judge did not enforce any specific punishment. A separate court will decide what Google needs to do to comply with the law. But this could reinforce the current case of the Department of Justice against Google. You might remember there was a case where the DOJ was saying Google needed to be broken up. At least they wanted to break off Chrome and maybe even Android from the main company because they just kept abusing their dominant position in the search market, in the operating system market for phones, but also in the web browser market. And so they wanted to break that off. Well, this gives them one more argument to say, you know what? They're also a monopoly on this specific thing, so this is starting to be a lot. Maybe we really should break them off. Of course, Google is appealing that ruling. They even turned that into half a victory because the judge said they weren't a monopoly in the ad network sector. So they say, we won half the case, but they also lost the other half. So that's not nearly a victory, but they're appealing it anyway, which is fair, that it is within their rights to do so. Now, it's only going to hurt me if Google gets blown up into multiple small entities. If there is more competition on ads, for example, on YouTube or on video ads in general, and on ad networks and on tools to access those networks and optimize campaigns, it means ad rates will go down. They're already dismally low. If you try to make a living on YouTube from just ad money from YouTube, you're not going to make it, not at the level of subscribers and views I have. So breaking up Google will hurt me financially, but I still defend it. I think Google needs to be broken up. All of these big tech companies should not be allowed to keep the gigantic iron grip that they have over giant parts of the internet. We need to break those companies up, and I will take the monetary loss if it's needed. I don't care. Break them up. I think it's cool. Cool, just like our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. Now, everyone who's been watching or listening to anything I've done for the past 3 years, they know about Tuxedo Computers. They're my number one go-to Linux hardware manufacturer. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux out of the box. But they have a gigantic range of desktops and laptops that will cover every price point and every need. They have a lot of customization options, including choosing your own custom keyboard layout, adding your own logo on the lid of your laptop, and choosing a bunch of the components inside of the device itself. I only use their computers these days. Everything I do on this channel and on any other content creation stuff that I do is done on one of their laptops, on their own Tuxedo OS distro, and all my gaming needs are served by one of their Tuxedo cubes running Linux just as well. If you need a new computer, you want to support Linux, you want to support a company that supports Linux developments, click the link in the description and check out Tuxedo Computers. They're really, really good. Okay, so this will conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it or watching it or whatever you do with these videos. I hope it's not too horrible. Click all the usual YouTube buttons, please, if you wish, if you have the time, if you thought the video was nice, just do that. It helps the channel. It really does. Everyone tells you that. You know about this. And you have plenty of links in the description to learn more about any of these topics, to support the show, whatever. You know how this works. So thanks for watching or listening, and I guess you'll see me in the next one next week. Bye!